I'm Barry Steigers, and the program is called Focus. We focus as much as possible on things that are close to us here in the Auburn area, in Placer County and Northern California. So that's who we are. Now, let me introduce you to first Don Wolf. He will introduce then Doug, James, and Camila, and we'll talk about what is happening at our local airport here. AAA is a name well known at our airport. And we have a very busy airport, by the way. It's a very busy with a lot of things going on that are even international in scope. And so having an organization that supports the younger folks to get into flying is what AAA is best known for. So Don Wolf, you've got a very active program at our airport. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I'm the scholarship director at Auburn Aviation Association, and all of us know that aviation is based on mentoring and paying it forward. Even our scholarship recipients are mentors. We've had 8 of them serve on our interview team. They've helped us out in presentations as facilitators. They mentor other students. Randy Lees, our former president, is running up our formal mentoring program. I got involved when Walt and Bonnie Wilson were running the program, and we were handing out $2,500. We interviewed 10 to 12 kids. It was a really good program, but it was tough getting that $2,500 every year. So we changed our funding model, which Doug Fee will talk about in a little bit. Now, one of the things I noticed when I became involved in the program was that a lot of kids were coming in T-shirts and ball hats and asking for that $2,500. They just didn't know anything about interviewing or the scope of what they were trying to do. So Larry Borchert and I, along with Renata McEnroth, a former scholarship kid, we put together an interview and training program and called it Aviation Career Night. We taught them how to do applications, interviews, dress for success. We had over 30 people come to that program. And we also had aviation mentors there from every form of aviation: the Highway Patrol, Placer County Sheriff, airline pilots, military, corporate pilots. We even had a bush pilot from Alaska. He was one of the most popular ones, Casey Long. And we had our former air traffic controller, Gary Morning. This program was a huge success, and it was 100% improvement in aviation in the interview performance the next year. So in 2020, the local EAA chapter, Experimental Aviation or Experimental Aircraft Association, Chapter 526, they approached us about handing out a $2,500 scholarship for them, as well as 2 trips to EAA Air Academy. They had a very successful Young Eagle program going, run by Steve Kendall, where they gave airplane rides to kids 7 to 17 and did workshops, and they wanted to get into the scholarship program. But we had James Jacobson, who's along today with us on this Zoom call. He created an online application for us, and our program became, much more professional and easier to run. So in 2021, just last year, Mach 5 Aviation asked us to give out a 10 hours of dual flight instruction for their scholarship. So in 2021, we had 5 scholarships for 3 different organizations. We were kind of on the map as an organization that could do scholarships. So this year, a foundation asked us to distribute scholarship money for them. They wanted to hand out 5 flight scholarships, 7 grants to the Sac City College for the A&P program, which is a mechanics program down there, 2 years long. And they also had a grant they were going to hand out for flight training. So in 2022, we distributed over $100,000, 8 flight scholarships, 8 grants, 2 trips to the EAA Air Academy. And the real secret to our success is we've assembled a group of people that are very talented and know what they're doing. And Barry, I would venture to say that there's no other small town in America that has an aviation program like we have, handing out that kind of money. So I'll turn it back to you and Doug Fee to talk about our funding process.
Great, thanks. I love that picture behind you, by the way. That's great. I mean,
that's the Auburn Airport.
Yeah, you have a camera there now so that you can actually see it live. And it is a busy airport, so I'm guessing you have a lot of folks dial in to see that thing. Great. Well, let's move on to your next guest, and let's talk on about how this all works. Doug?
Well, thanks, Barry. As Don briefly alluded to a few minutes ago, one of the issues we had early on for a long time with our scholarship program was scrounging up the money each year to fund a scholarship. And we'd get donations, we'd do fundraisers, and then we'd spend the money, and the next year we'd start from scratch again. So somewhere along the line, someone came up with an idea of forming or establishing an endowment where we could really push the funding and get this endowment up to the point where it would we could live off the interest of that endowment. We could take the proceeds from that endowment, leave the principal alone, and just use the proceeds to fund our scholarships, which was a great idea. It was a big challenge, and it was a big risk, frankly, for the AAA to take. Because we had to put almost our last dollar in it just to get the thing started. But we ultimately came up with a consensus. We did that. We started out with an initial deposit with the Placer Community Foundation here in Auburn of $25,000, which was pretty much all we had. And it was a leap of faith. Our goal initially was that at the end of 3 years, we wanted to have that 25,000 grown to about the range of 60 to 70,000 total, because that's the amount it would take to give us about $2,500 a year to fund an ongoing scholarship permanently. So we started working up towards that goal. Don Wolf is a great salesman, and he's great at going out and convincing people they want to help fund our program. And I got to tell you, I'm dazzled because we're coming up on the 3-year mark this coming July. And as of right now, I don't know what the current balance is, but again, we were targeting $60,000 to $70,000. We're now over $200,000. And this is just simply because we've had community buy-in to what we're doing. And it's really gratifying to me to see this kind of support from the community. And a part of it is, we're supporting the young people who are pursuing careers in aviation. We're also supporting aviation at our local airport. So we've got right now 5 flight schools out of the airport, and all this flight training gets done at our airport. We've got Sunshine Flyers, Mach 5, Sierra Air Helicopter, Blue Canyon Aviation, and a new one that we haven't dealt with a whole lot yet, Sky Trails. But these are all local Auburn airport companies, and this is where we're doing all of our flight training. So I think that one of the beauties of this program is that our success has begot more success, because we have attracted people who have said, hey, these guys are doing something worthwhile, and they're doing a good job of it. And so now we have people like this foundation coming in wanting us to help give out scholarship money for them. And we've had, of course, we mentioned Tom Dwelly briefly. Tom has been involved. He's been a big supporter of AAA. And another thing that has come along is our local World War II triple ace fighter pilot, Bud Anderson, has participated in, we have wound up naming one of our scholarships in his name. And so we've gotten a lot of community support and community buy-in.
Thanks, Doug. And I'm glad that you could bring along 2 products of your effort. James, who you can see in part of the on the Zoom here, and also Camille. So let me start. James, what's your story? You walked one day over and said, help me, and here you are now a commercial pilot. Is that accurate?
That's pretty much how it works, Barry. I got fortunate to be involved with the EAA chapter as well throughout the process. For me, that first interaction came at age 8 through the EAA chapter at the Grass Valley Airport, Nevada County. And it was as simple as just asking local renowned Young Eagles pilot Bill Summers, who was passing in and out of the local office up there, if he was a pilot at the time, at age 8, just being a kid that was passionate and curious about airplanes. And that ended up turning into Young Eagles Ride and the subsequent joining of the local chapter, and in turn being the recipient of some of those scholarships that have been previously mentioned for the Air Academy over in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. A grand total of 2 times for that. And following that, when I got in high school, I just began flight training down at the Auburn Airport through one of the mentioned flight schools over at Mach 5. And through that process, really discovered more about the Auburn Aviation airport community, and just how many noteworthy and very impactful aviators to the community of aviation at large had come from the Auburn area. And it's really a community that's rich in aviation history, and a lot of airports just don't have the same connection that Auburn does. During that time when I was a sophomore in high school learning how to fly, I was approached about the possibility of applying for the AAA scholarship program. So I did apply for that in 2013, and I received it the following spring. and used it to complete my pilot training as a junior in high school. From there, that was the stepping stone that really led the way as far as accelerating my flight training to a point where I was able to then go on to attend one of the more well-known aviation universities in the country. And that really was the stepping stone for my whole career, now being a commercial airline pilot, having that tie all the way back to the Auburn Aviation community. And it's interesting because during that time when I started the training process, there were actually really only about 2 main flight schools on the airport. And through this process growing over the last almost 10 years now, it's been an incredible thing to watch not only the community buy in, as Doug was saying, but also the impact that's had fiscally on the Auburn aviation community, both by generating scholarship funds and encouraging new businesses and flight training opportunities, just increasing the value that aviation adds to the Placer County area.
James, look out 5 years from now. What do you expect to be driving?
5 years from now, I could easily see the possibility of being on a 75 or 767 Boeing product, or maybe a large Airbus like a 330, flying from anywhere from Los Angeles over to Singapore or Sydney, Australia, on some sort of wide body transcontinental or intercontinental flight as well.
Camille, I'm old enough to remember that there weren't very many women in the cockpit. And then I started to see them show up, and all of a sudden we had a lot of women flying airplanes. Now you're one of those. Tell me your story.
Yeah, I'm pretty grateful to get to be an advocate for women in aviation, in addition to Auburn Airport as well. I started being obsessed with airplanes ever since I knew they were really a thing. And it wasn't until age 16 I started hanging out at the Auburn Airport at Mach 5, and I volunteered in the hangar, washing airplanes and turning a wrench in exchange for flight time. Flight time's pretty expensive, so I didn't really get very many hours doing that. And I applied for my first scholarship through the Auburn Aviation Association when Walt was running the program back then, and received my first $2,500 scholarship. And that was a huge leap into knowing I was capable of getting this goal met, and people believed that I could do it. And so it was pretty awesome to get to do that. And it wasn't until maybe 3 or 4 years later that I revisited the Auburn Aviation Association during my instrument training, and applied for another scholarship when Don was on the panel and some other new people, and once again was able to receive another AAA scholarship. And then I went on to receive my flight instructor license and my flight instructor instrument and commercial license and all that. Then I got to start being a part of the behind the scenes and sitting on the panel. And it was pretty rewarding to get to be on the other side of it, picking these people, because I got to be, on the interview process the whole time. And I've really watched the program change a lot. And I'm very impressed this year, because this was the first year I've been back on the panel in a couple of years. And just the amount of funding that changed from when I was there, getting $2,500, which will help you towards a rating. It won't finish a whole rating. And now giving 10 grand out per child is pretty extreme. And getting to be the one to make the phone call that I got to hear on my end, was telling them that they won, was just kind of the icing on the cake. Now I work for CAL FIRE in support pilot missions all over California. My ultimate goal is to be a tanker pilot for CAL FIRE. So I'm currently in a good position to meet that goal, just trying to build the time and get where I want to be.
Camille, I'm going to tell you a quick story. A friend of mine is a singer.
Oh boy.
She's a very attractive, nice lady. And I knew her father, who was a big band leader in Sacramento. His name was John Skinner. And I went to a dance one night, and she was with the band. And so I went up to meet her. I didn't know who she was. And as we talked about her father and my relationship with him, who was an Air Force colonel, and then went to work for FedEx, flying the big ones. And I said, "So what is your day job?" And she looked at me and smiled, and she said, "Oh, I'm a senior cap on a 777. I've been there 15 years with American Airlines, and my trips are Singapore and into Australia." So the incredible opportunity is certainly there for you. and for everybody. But I wanted to tell you that story so that you keep going, because it sounds like you're having a great time and a great career. And that's what it all started right there in Auburn. So I think Don and Doug, I think it's great. These young people are now taking over and making it happen. And look what they're contributing. And they're staying in Auburn, which is even better. Now, if you do get on the big airlines, I guess you have to commute a bit. I know she does, but she's out of San Francisco, so it's not so bad. So thanks, both of you, James and Camille. It's a great story, and thanks for sharing it with us. Don, and we'll finish it up here. This is a great story, and I want to come back and visit you maybe a couple of times every year, because I'd like to talk to the next Camille and the next James, if you could arrange that for me.
Yeah, we can do that, Barry. And I can't tell you how proud I am to be associated with both of them, Doug, and everyone else in our association, because it really is a first-class operation. We're doing good things out there, and I'm just very proud of it, proud to be associated with it.
I'm Barry Steigers, and the program is Focus. Thanks, guys, and thanks everybody for being with us today.